Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show here in a very crazy time in the NFL. How are you, Albert?
I feel like we got hosed here because we're playing the fake Cinderella. It's never good to be playing the fake Cinderella.
Fake Cinderella?
What do you know? Like Gonzaga for a lot of years was the fake Cinderella, where they're actually a tough team.
Yes,
but it looks bad if you lose to them. You know what I mean?
I do appreciate that. Yes, I do appreciate that.
Cinderella.
Well, I may not be rooting for your school, but I'm rooting for you, Albert, since I know it's a big time basketball world there at Ohio State. So I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you.
So we got what, like 9 months left? Is that right?
Left.
9 months left.
I love it. Left. Yes, right around there, approximately 8 or so. So, what's the scoop right now with Baker Mayfield? What's going on in Ohio, in Cleveland?
Yeah,
right now.
I think like right now, I think they're sort of going to wait for the rest of the quarterback market to play out, and just the same way a lot of things were on hold when Aaron Rodgers was making his decision. Sort of feels the same way with Deshaun Watson, that he's sort of the last big shoe to drop on the quarterback market, and then. You start to see the movement. Does it mean Matt Ryan's going to move? Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo, the Niners have been waiting for the Deshaun shoe to drop, so they can get a little bit more aggressive about potentially moving Jimmy. And I think Baker's sort of part of that equation. And the interesting thing about it, they did say to Baker that they weren't going to honor his trade request. But really, right now, Rich, they don't have to say anything, because if there's a team that's interested, nothing stopping that team from calling the Browns and inquiring. So just having the, back and forth out there essentially will smoke out, who's really interested in Baker. I think in the meantime, they have to assess whether or not going forward with Baker is manageable and whether or not it's the best option. Because, I think we all know Baker's history, and how he's reacted in the past to people not believing him has actually been relatively favorable. You go back and you look at Texas Tech and Oklahoma. So it could mean the Browns get a really good season out of him. The other question, again, is going to be whether or not the relationship's manageable, and I think the Browns are going to take a little bit of time here to figure that out.
Well, I mean, the Mike Tomlin phrase this past year, I think it involved Melvin Ingram, right, where he said we want volunteers, not hostages. And it's
right.
I think Baker, with his Costanza like I'm breaking up with you before you break up with me note to Cleveland, and his reaction to say when the Browns reach out, I want to trade, I think he's declared he's going to be a hostage if he sticks around.
Right.
And,
I mean, it's in the immediate aftermath, and I love the reference there, because that post the other night was definitely dripping with passive aggression, I would say. I think right now he's of that mind that he wants to go play somewhere else. What are his options? That's the other question. Would Carolina trade for him after they just failed a similar experiment with Sam Darnold? I don't know. Would Indianapolis trade for him, having gone through what they went through at the quarterback position? That's what's fascinating about it, Rich, is it's not just, Baker wanting out. It's like, where are you going to? And are you going to have a chance to start somewhere else? And I'm sure he wants to explore that. But right now, I don't think it's impossible to look at it and not think there's a scenario at the end of this where the two sides may need each other, and where Baker may not be able to find a place where he's a clear-cut starter elsewhere. Maybe he will, but there's a possibility he doesn't. And the Browns may look around and say, maybe we don't have a better option right now than Baker Mayfield.
So then what is before we move on here, what is the backstory, in the similar way that Seattle, you hear for anybody who talks about Seattle and Russell Wilson,
yeah.
It was just time to move on. Which is the shorthand of they were sick of him and he was sick of them. And the question is what made them sick over each other? And it's kind of, we're in that situation right here. So what is the issue? Did it involve Odell? Is it the coach's scheme and his inefficiency in running it? Is it the way he's acting behind the scenes? What is it? What is
I think there are some leadership questions, and I think it's not Baker's not trying to be a leader. I think he is. But the sense I've gotten is, there were times when he would get after teammates, and there was questions, I think, in the locker room whether or not he'd earned the right to do that. And so, for example, say a receiver runs the wrong route in practice, say an offensive lineman doesn't get a protection call right, whatever it is, Baker might get after that guy, and then that guy might look at him sideways and saying, "Who are you to call me out on this when you missed X, Y, and Z over here?" And so I think there was a little bit of that to cause some friction for Baker, and I don't know if it's the root of the Odell thing, but I think it existed. I think that there's that question too that sort of, I think exists for the Browns, and it's something the Browns are going to have to confront, which is, after all of this, is he still going to have, I guess, like the leadership capital in the locker room? And are they going to be able to lean on him to be the guy in 2022 with a team that they rightfully believe is really, really good, like has a chance to be really, really good and be right back in the playoffs after injuries and, some of those other things derailed them last year.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. So in your mailbag today on Sports Illustrated, the MMQB, you mentioned that the issue with Watson and deciding to either go home in Atlanta, to Atlanta, where the weapons wouldn't be the same as New Orleans, or go to New Orleans and just start fresh there. Money is now entering the equation. Yeah. Is that the holdup? Why we're not seeing anything, or part of the reason why teams have dropped out or been told they're not winning these sweepstakes?
I think it's a factor. I've heard new money, I've heard guaranteed money has been part of the equation there, and I really at this point get the sense that he really, I think he's intrigued by the idea of going home. And I think he's there's a huge part of him that wants to go to Atlanta while realizing that the best football situation in 2022, is in New Orleans. And so, I think everything factors in. And, if we're being, honest about this, he and his people probably have to brace for a suspension. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but the possibility is that it happens. He's got a $35 million base for next year. So, a half-season suspension, right? If he's suspended for 8 games, what would that be? I don't know, Rich. I went to Ohio State, so I'm not great at math. But I would say, that's $16 million possibly he could lose. So he might ask the team to move money around and then guarantee money down the line to protect himself against being suspended this year. And so I think all of that is part of the equation, And I think, part of it for him is probably wanting to know, the team's all in on him and is going to stick by him in the case of a suspension and that sort of thing. And I'd say the draft pick compensation going the other way is probably pretty good proof of that for whoever acquires him. But I do think that the contract is, at least a piece of the puzzle. And if this thing is really close between Atlanta and New Orleans, and I think it is, and that's why it's taken so long, then the contract could wind up being some sort of tiebreaker.
Well, if the contract and the money and the compensation is tied to how the rest of Watson's civil suits play out, how come we're not talking more about the civil suit situation? It's almost as if, the no bill comes in criminally, all good. Now let's all rush to go get Deshaun Watson, and there's no question about how this is all going to play out, or
no, I think
there is
a question. I think there is a question. And, look, this is part of the reason. I can tell you, on Wednesday night, the Gail Benson, the Saints owner, she flew to Atlanta to meet with them, to sit down and meet with them. And I think that that's sort of symbolic of what this is for every team that was involved, which is it takes ownership sign-off. Ownership, I guess, technically has to sign off on any big move. But you and I both know, a lot of those are rubber stamps. This isn't a rubber stamp. You know what I mean? This is, the guy's going to be the face of your franchise, and so his problems become your problems. And this isn't even, I've heard the comparison to Mike Vick, but that's different too, because Mike Vick was coming into Philadelphia as a third-string guy. You're not acquiring Deshaun Watson to be the third-string guy. acquiring Deshaun Watson to be the most, notable person in your franchise from the minute that he walks in the door. And so, yeah, I would say it's very much a piece of the equation. And I think I've said this to you a few times, but several teams have had their security people on this for over a year. And those are all ex-law enforcement people who are able to get information. And then a couple of these teams have had private investigators on the ground in Houston. I'm not sure Atlanta's one of those because they were late comers to the party.
Right.
So maybe they've been playing catch up a little bit on this, but there are teams that were involved that were comfortable after doing that amount of homework. So again, I'm not saying anybody's not taking this seriously. I think every team that's involved is, but certainly I think, with the 22 civil suits out there, there's a level of risk that comes with it. And there's, I would say, you hate to even call it a PR hit, but like that's sort of what it is. It's like that you are going to take on certain things that are going to come along with acquiring Deshaun Watson, regardless of what city it's in.
All right, before I let you go, Albert, the biggest story in my mind of this non-playing season right now has to be Rodgers stays, Adams goes. I mean, what an O. Henry-like plot twist to the way the Packers are trying to continue to run it back. How did this come about, and how do you think it sits with Aaron Rodgers? So many people just assume he's got to be livid with the Packers organization, but the Packers read him into it from all I hear. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And I think that's such a key thing because, like, the communication last year, Rich, was nowhere. I mean, I can tell you, like, I think there was like a 6-week, 2-month period, whatever it was last year, where the Packers literally couldn't get a hold of him. And I think he's been pretty public in saying, like, he wants to be in the loop on these sorts of things. And so, like, the fact that the Packers kept him in the loop throughout, I think, softens the blow here. I also think he's so close to Davante Adams that he probably understands his reasons for doing this and for wanting out probably better than even the team does, And so if this really was unworkable and the Packers really were willing to go financially where Adams went with the Raiders, and it was still, at this point where there was nothing the Packers could do, then I think Aaron Rodgers probably has a pretty good understanding of it. Obviously, he wants great players around him, and Davante Adams is a great, great player, maybe the best receiver in football. But, I think the fact that, he was, I think, apprised of this and the communication is so much better than it was a year ago, softens the blow. I think that I would have to think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would have to think that there is a plan B that's been communicated to Aaron Rodgers for how they're going to handle this now going forward. And maybe it means taking a big swing at receiver, whether it's signing an Odell Beckham or trading him for a Robert Woods or whatever it is, trading for DK Metcalf, whatever it is out there. I'd assume that there's been some sort of plan that's been communicated to Aaron Rodgers where he feels comfortable. Because, of course, I think by now we would have heard that there was a huge issue on his end.
Trading for DK Metcalf, you think that's possible?
I mean, I think it sort of depends. So Seattle, to me, is interesting just because, DK Metcalf's going to be expensive to keep. He's going into a contract year. And, I think it's one of those where it's like, if they say, like, they're going forward with Drew Lock at quarterback, right, and they make the decision, we're turning the page, right? And I'm sure, they'll have an idea, by the time we get to the draft of whether or not DK is going to be on the team past this year. So, like, it's one of those where it's like, if this is a retooling year, is it, if you're not going to be able to re-sign him, or, you're just that far apart in contract negotiations, it may make sense, again, if this is a year where you're restocking the cupboard and trying to, turn it around and draft well and kind of build a new base for yourself, it could make sense where, DK Metcalf's, value right now would be at a high point. So it's a call. I'm not saying they are going to shop him, but if you're a team like the Packers, I think it's a call that you make.
Certainly, if you've got the draft capital now because Adams left, and
right.
The question I have, last one for you, is why was it unworkable for Adams if they did put the money on the table? Was it, from what it appears, just too late? Like they should have done it last year? That's it?
Yeah, I think that's really it. And I think he had it in his head. I don't know if you guys saw the reports out there from a couple of weeks ago that he bought like a $12 million mansion, I think it was, in Vegas. And I'm not like that up on Vegas real estate, but I think $12 million goes a long way in Las Vegas, right? In buying a house. So,
yeah, it comes with the blue. It comes with the Blue Man Group, I think.
Yeah,
something that big.
So
yeah,
I'd assume that there was there are enough breadcrumbs here where it does seem like, I like Davante had it in his head that, my college teammates there, it's a team I grew up rooting for. It's a team I've dreamed of playing for. And, oh, by the way, like now I find out that they're willing to satisfy every financial desire that I have. I think he just kind of that thought in Davante's head had gone to the point of no return. And I mean, it's a great sign for the. I mean, I'll throw this in there too, just to finish up, Rich. You look at Josh McDaniels and what he's doing in Vegas, and how opposite it is of what they did in Denver, where he immediately sidles up to the quarterback and partners with the quarterback, and has been so effusive on Derek Carr. And now, instead of tearing the team down and bringing in middling pieces the way they did in Denver, they're going big game hunting and bringing in Chandler Jones and Davante Adams. I could see why that would be attractive to somebody like Adams.
Yeah, man. The AFC West, huh? Isn't that it? It's just.
Oh yeah. Who would have thought 3 weeks ago? If I told you 3 weeks ago the Chiefs are going to be the least aggressive team in the AFC West, how would you have responded to that?
It would have been surprising, but also somewhat understanding that you got to go for it. I mean, honestly, look at the AFC West right now. You've got. If I had to ask you, name me the top 5 pass catchers in the league, I think you'd say Adams, Hill, and Kelsey would be in 3 of them, right? If you got to name me some of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, you definitely go with Mahomes, and Herbert would be thrown in there, right? And now Russ is there.
Now.
And then now you got to get pass rushers to prevent all these guys.
Which is, I mean, you look at the pass rushers, it's insane. Chandler Jones, Max Crosby, Bradley Chubb, now Randy Gregory coming over. Frank Clark, I know he didn't have a great year last year, but they hope he'll bounce back. And then Bosa and Mack in L.A. is pretty crazy.
It's great. Albert, thanks for the time. Have a great weekend. I hear the kids in the background. I appreciate you tapping out to do that. Ohio State by 5 at the half, in case you're wondering.
Thanks for the update. I did walk away from it, so I appreciate it, Rich.
Yeah, up by 5 at the half. Thanks for the call, Albert. Appreciate it.
And hopefully we can take down the fake Cinderella for all of the Big Ten.
Well, again, it's not just Big Ten. It's for the basketball school in Columbus. So I apprate that. That'd be great.
8 months, Rich. 8 months.
Well, it would be a longer 8 months if you can't hold on to this 5-point lead. I'm feeling good. Last time we spoke, my team was blowing it against Indiana that just got blown out by St. Mary's, and I'm sitting pretty. I'm sitting in that second spot.
You're doing okay now, though. You guys
hanging in there.
Cover yesterday.
Take care of yourself, Albert. Be well.
All right, Rich.
That's Albert Breer right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.